turns her camera on, we'll move forward, but I'd like to start anyway. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of January 26, 2021 to order with adoption of the agenda. If a councillor could make that motion, please. Councillor Charlotte, seconded by Councillor Brooks Hill. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 12th, 2021. Someone want to make that? Councillor Charlotte, seconded by Councillor Brooks Hill. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Any business arising from those regular council minutes? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item number 5A, Development Services, Development Variance Permit. And Ms. Wade, you have a presentation, or Ms. Hartling?
Ms. Hartling does.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just load it right now. Just before I begin, can everyone see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
No, I can't. But I have it beside me anyways, so.
Okay, we'll move on.
Continue, Your Worship.
Yes, please. Thank you, Ms. Hartling.
So staff are here to present to council a development variance permit application and a cannabis license application. The applicant is requesting that council approves a non-medical cannabis retail store to be located at 1605 Victoria Road West and within 100 meters of an municipally owned building and site catering to youth. And for council's information, the applicant, Karina Lucas, is in attendance today and in the meeting and wishes to speak to and address council if given the opportunity after the staff presentation has concluded. We'll just go over the presentation overview. I'll be going over the background information of the applications, the proposal, some policy direction that staff follow when reviewing an application, and then the public notification period and submissions received, and the staff recommendation and council options. So the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, the LCRB, notified the city that the Canadian Mountain Cannabis Ltd. applied for a provincial non-medical cannabis retail store license. The LCRB has completed its assessment for a provincial non-medical retail store license for the eligibility and suitability requirements, and they determined that the applicant is presently fit and proper for purposes under the Cannabis Control and Licensing Act. One of the requirements is that under the Act is that the local government send a positive recommendation to the province in order for the license to be issued by the province. So the applicant has submitted a cannabis license application to the city, and upon review, it was identified that the proposed cannabis retail store location is in contravention of the city's the regulatory requirement to maintain a minimum setback from a municipally owned property catering to youth. This is known as the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center. So the applicant has submitted a development variance permit application requesting to reduce the required setback of a cannabis retail store from a municipally owned property that caters to youth. Just a bit about the background. The subject property in front of you here is located at 1605 Victoria Road West. The property is zoned C6 Victoria Road Commercial District. This zoning does permit the use of cannabis retail sales. And the property is also within the scenic corridor development permit area. However, as the previous building renovation that constructed Unit 5 was already issued a scenic corridor development permit, this subject proposal does not require that permit application. The property contains a strip mall, and this includes a restaurant in Unit 1, which is known as Zala's, pet store in Unit 2, which is the animal house, natural food store in Unit 3, which is the Mountain Goodness Natural Food Store, and then an escape room in Unit 4, the Revelstock escape rooms and virtual reality. The surrounding land uses of the property are Victoria Road to the north, commercial businesses, Wright Street, and some vacant land to the east, a motel to the south, and a community garden and art center to the west and southwest. The two applications seek to print the location of the cannabis retail store within Unit 5. You can see Unit 5 right here. And the development permit application is to reduce the required distance for cannabis retail sales from a municipally owned property that caters to youth from the 100-meter distance requirement to 44 meters. The proposed interior alterations, you can see in the floor layout there, include constructing 2x4 walls, installing cabinetry, and painting the interior. Any proposed interior structural alterations will require a building permit. And for the exterior, the applicant has proposed new signage and also a 4 to 6 foot fence. They have noted that it's either be wood or a chain link fence with privacy slats along the property line to screen the parking area and the store from neighboring adjacent properties, which include the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center. So you'll just see here, this purple line here is the distance to the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center property. This is the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center, community gardens, and Unit 5 here is where the proposed cannabis retail store is to be located and the extent of the fence that they're proposing. When staff review the application, we have the policy DS8 for cannabis and liquor license applications, and then also the zoning bylaw. So the subject property is zone C6 in the zoning bylaw, which lists cannabis retail sales as a permitted use. The DS8 cannabis licensing policy and zoning bylaw have additional criteria that must be met. And these regulations are that the use is to be permitted in the zoning bylaw. The location is not within the minimum distance of a site or facility catering to youth. And this is outlined in the zoning bylaw. The location is not within 100 meters or 300 meters of another cannabis retail sales, and this is dependent on the zoning bylaw and zones listed in the bylaw. So the proposed cannabis retail store meets all the zoning bylaw regulations except the one location criteria you can see there on your screen. So the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center is a municipally owned building and site that offers adult and youth workshops and classes, and also contains a gallery, gift shop, community garden, wood shop, and pottery studio. So as a proposed retail store is within 44 meters of the art center, a development variance permit must be considered and approved before council may review a cannabis license application. So 30 properties are captured in the 100-meter notification area. And landowners within the 100 meters of the subject property have been provided a notice for the variance and for the cannabis license application. And this is in accordance with the Local Government Act provisions and also the DS8 policy. And the property owners and tenants had until 1 p.m. today to provide written submissions to the city if they feel their property is affected by the proposed applications. Staff have received 5 public submissions that are included in the council agenda and on the city website. 4 submissions received are in opposition of the proposed cannabis retail store. These 4 submissions received are from the Revelstoke Visual Arts Society, a tenant of the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center, and then an adjacent escape room business owner and an existing cannabis retail store owner that is operating within the city in another location. The one submission received in support of the proposal is from the owners of the proposed cannabis retail store. If council has not had a chance to review all of the public submissions in detail, if requested after the staff presentation, I can present all of the written submissions on the screen and read out the submissions before council considers the 2 applications. The staff's recommendation for the proposed cannabis retail store is based on the zoning bylaw, policy DS8, and the criteria provided by the province and comments gathered from the public regarding these criteria. So as noted in the staff report, as a subject proposal does not comply with Section 519A of the zoning bylaw and Section 1B of the policy DS8, staff's recommendation is to deny the development variance permit and the cannabis license application. However, public comments are a very large criteria of the local government consideration review of the applications, and staff had not yet gathered and reviewed any public submissions on the application at the time of writing the staff report and recommendation. So council or staff have outlined for council two options. Should council wish to deny the development variance permit and cannabis license, the resolution on council option 1 on the screen here can be considered. Should council wish to support the development variance permit and approve this application and send a recommendation of approval to the province, then the resolution on council option 2 slide can be considered. Thank you, Your Worship. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Hartling. So we have Ms. Lucas here as a guest, who's a proponent, and Ms. Lucas, if you would like to speak to council at this time, you're welcome to do so.
Okay, thank you. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, carry on.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time in listening to us today. I basically just want to, state that we are very conscious of, any children, activities, community, involvement with this store. And we want to follow all, regulations and laws that go with this store. And with the liquor cannabis licensing and the store itself, it does follow very strict rules that is laid out, that we have cameras that are inside and out. There's no loitering outside of the building, and anything that doesn't meet those needs is addressed. So with the proposed fence line, we are hoping that you consider if we put up a chain link fence with privacy slats, so if someone is working in the gardens, or if they're having some sort of gardening, classes or anything like that, the sight line will not, there's no access and there's no sight line at all when it comes to the store, because the access itself is on the other side of the Revelstoke Art Center. So basically, the only way that they could come around is if they drive on Victoria Road to the site. So we're hoping that this will help fulfill the Revelstoke Museum and Visual Arts needs, that if they are concerned about it, that they can, it'll be blocked off, basically. And I've spoke with Demico as well, and they are in agreement with this fence as long as all the other requirements are met for snow removal and for all property lines and access to any other, roadways and stuff like that that cannot be covered. Does anyone have any questions for me based on, the store itself? Like, basically, we have been working on this for about 1.5 years, and Demico has put out the investment to put the store in place for an area, because we've looked at many different areas, and have worked on this diligently for the last year, basically. So we have a lot invested in Revelstoke and would really love to see, revenue for Revelstoke and support Revelstoke and means of employment, local employment, and all of that as in a positive note for Revelstoke.
All right. Councillor Ryan, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you, as the applicant, were aware of the bylaw requirement regarding the location and the distance from a facility catering to youth when you sort of went through this process, or was there sort of ambiguity there?
We had, this was, like I said, about 1 year ago. So Michael Colson was the when they showed us all the mapping and all the areas that were zoned, we had adamantly asked to make sure that, if there was going to be any sort of basic, anything that would conflict with us applying for this location. And at the time, he basically stated, no, just go ahead and apply. And so at the time, we were not aware of the Revelstoke Community Arts Center being there. We assumed, for us, that was on our part, but that it was just a museum. We didn't realize that it was catered to youth at the time. So when this came to light as of recently, we were quite concerned because did not know at the time that it would be a conflict of interest. So
right. Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious too, from staff's perspective, is there a place that all kind of future applicants or current applicants can see all the municipally owned buildings or buildings that cater to youth? Is that map available?
There was a map. Oh.
Go ahead. Ms. Hartling, carry on. Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Staff have a map of daycares in the area. It was determined when the cannabis license was submitted and we sent it out for referrals that it was a building that catered to youth. So staff were not aware that the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center, with the submission of the application at the time, triggered that one criteria of being located within 100 meters of a site catering to youth. The Revelstoke Visual Arts Center, during referrals, did confirm that they do cater to youth. So we do have maps where we have city land, but determining that factor of if the subject business or building is strictly catering to youth is something that we do not have mapping of.
So it's kind of a risk for any applicant, I guess, when they apply. It's on them to do their homework. I'm just curious what that.
Yeah. So within like 100 meters of the business, or 300 meters, depending on your zone, that there's no cannabis retail sales within that area. With 100 meters, you would check all of the properties, and so we did the check of the 100 meters when the application came in. And then just checked all the municipally owned properties and sent out emails basically asking these questions. And it came back that they do have youth programs.
And so at what point in the application then would the applicant have been notified that that was the case? Like how far along in the process are they at that point?
They're at referrals. So the application comes in and then staff do a review and send out a referral letter to agencies or anyone with interest in the application. And then we get those comments back and draft up a staff analysis. So during that time, the applicant was notified that staff identified a criteria that required a variance in order for the application to proceed, or else it would not be able to proceed.
Okay.
Follow up, Councillor Rind, or go ahead, Ms. Hardling.
Well, no, sorry, go ahead.
So the regulations in the zoning bylaw and the cannabis policy, they mimic each other. And it says 100 meters within it lists off a site catering to youth, park, like it lists off of those items that would trigger that. But there's no measure for council of whether, like, if it's 50% of the business catering to youth, it doesn't say like how much. So if it's catering to youth, then that's how staff have determined that criteria.
Ms. Wade, do you like to weigh in? You had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I also wanted to note there's some background history to this application. There was a DVP and a building permit for an addition, and this has been repurposed with use. So when Michael Coulson was dealing with it, it was a development, a minor development permit, and was being for storage or another use. So there was a change of use along the way. I'd just like to point that out.
All right, Councillor Elliott, you had a question?
I have a few, Gary, but just generally, I lived in the Farwell area, very close to that area for some time, and the art center itself wasn't a highly used facility by youth. It seems primarily an adult area. I mean, there may be some children that go there and do some banner work, but I can't say I've seen a lot of children in the area. So that's just from my firsthand sort of exposure to that zone. I'm just, the question I have is pertaining to the Economic Development Committee and whether the Chamber of Commerce, both those agencies, whether they've had any comment on the issue.
They're not within the 100 meters, so I don't know whether they would, whether
No,
a
I mean,
referral would go to him.
No, I would think as a, you know, if we're looking at encouraging entrepreneurial activity and trying to support business in this sort of an economic downturn, we would be looking for advice or some information from, I guess, the people who are in the know. And, you know, maybe they can tell me what, you know, my biggest question is whether another marijuana shop is economically viable.
And so, Councillor Elliott, so two things. First of all, this is a development variance permit for zoning or for use, so it wouldn't go to those people. But also, just because the chamber represents the business community, whether they would be versed in saying whether this business would be too much or not, I don't know. So that's kind of, I think I appreciate your question, but I think we would be, we'd be getting off track here. So you have another question?
No, Gary, I disagree there. You and I disagree on that. And I think the economic, I mean, the issue is whether we need another cannabis shop in our community. I mean, I think it's a weak argument that we're close to the art center, where you know, that facility has probably been looking for customers and trying to create some buzz at that end of town. It makes sense, but whether it's the real issue is whether we need another cannabis shop in our town.
Okay, good.
Your
Thank
worship,
you.
your
Yes,
worship,
Ms. Loeb.
through the chair. So what's before you right now is a development variance permit that is governed by the zoning bylaw and a policy. So council can decide as to whether or not they want to grant the variance for this application or not grant it. It's a council decision. It's not up to council to determine what the market can or cannot hold. So I just want to make sure that council's focusing on what they can govern, and that is the zoning bylaw and a development variance permit that is in front of you for a cannabis retail store. So you do have the power to allow this or to deny it.
Great.
It's a council decision.
Thank you for your input. You have one more comment, Councillor Elliott, and then Councillor Rind has her hand up.
Sorry, Gary. No, nothing at this time.
Okay, Councillor Rind.
Yes, I'm curious how this compares to the application that we denied near the museum. Those applicants were aware that they were applying for, you know, at the referral phase. Is that when they found out as well? Or did they go into it under the, like, knowing that they were within 100 meters of a place that catered to youth?
Ms. Hartling or Ms. Wade, either one you want to weigh in on that, if that plays a part of this?
So that one was a little bit different because the property wasn't permitted cannabis retail sales in the zone. So they required a rezoning application to be reviewed. And yet at the time of the rezoning application, it was identified that the museum does have programs that cater to youth, but that was one aspect of the application that would have to be considered later on. They would have to go through a full rezoning process. And I believe that was in the report where staff identified a development variance permit would have to be issued if the rezoning was approved. It would be rezoning, development variance permit, and a cannabis license if they had a successful application.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And
Ms. Wade?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And just, so when in that case, when that applicant came in, they were made aware of the two conditions, in particular, the fact that it was not allowed in the zoning, and they wanted to proceed, and as per the LGA, it is our duty to take it forward for council consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Council, any follow-up questions?
Yes, Gary?
So, Councillor Elliott, just a little bit of formality. Mr. Mayor, or Your Worship, if you wouldn't mind, just because we're following Robert's Rules of Order, please.
Okay, Your Worship. I'm just curious about the escape room letter. They're against this proposal? I haven't seen that correspondence.
Ms. Hartling, could you put the letters up on the screen and just report out on them for us, please? You're muted, Ms. Hartling.
Thank you, Your Worship. It looks like someone else put them up. I can just share my screen because I cannot control that one. So the first letter we received was from the Revelstoke Visual Arts Society. I believe members have seen that one as it came in earlier. A tenant from the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center. And then the letter from the owners of the Canadian Mountain Cannabis proposed cannabis retail store came in, if you've seen that one. Yeah. And then the letter from one of the other cannabis retail sales locations in the city. And then the last letter that came in is the one that I think you're referring to, is from the owner of the escape room. And then, so their rationale, if you would like me to read it out, Your Worship.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Hartling, then we have it in the record, please.
So I am writing to oppose this variance for a number of reasons. Approximately 40% of my business, the Revelstoke Escape Rooms, is families, kids, or kids' parties. A cannabis store next door will totally stop the vast majority of that business at a time when my business is already under severe strain from COVID-19 related issues. That's the first point. Second issue is that City Council voted against a similar application for a property close to the Revelstoke City and Heritage Museum, citing the fact that children use the museum for a number of activities year-round. I would hope that the City Councilors would show some consistency in their decisions where proposed cannabis store locations are near to city building, in this case the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center, that hold a number of kids' activities throughout the year. Number three is we had hoped to expand our offering more catering to children, a small arcade and new attractions, but this would be impossible due to the location of this development, as this will discourage families from coming to us. I will not be able to attend the council meeting in person as I work full time, but hope my letter has explained why I'm totally opposed to this variance. Thank you for taking the trouble to read my letter, and then signed off by the owner of the Revelstoke Escape Room.
Great, thank you, Ms. Hartling. Councillor Charlotte, you have your hand up.
Yeah, great, thank you. So I've been watching this one a little bit because I do sit at the Visual Arts Center board, attending their meetings and watching the work they've been doing. They've really been revitalizing that space, like the new roof this past summer and programming, especially for the kids. I know they've been working really hard to build relevance in the community. And then the community garden as a space for the local food initiative has been a growing space with lots of participation over the last few years. I'm concerned about the idea of a fence. I think that area, being open is part of the pleasure of it, that you can walk over from the Nomad and spend some time in the community garden in that front garden area. We were just talking about how they were asking for a poop bin for the dogs because so many people come over and walk their dogs to that space and they need a place to dispose of it. So I think that this space fits that bill for the 100 meters within a space that caters to youth pretty strongly, especially with that letter from the escape rooms. So I don't think I am as supportive of this application. There was one more point I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was. Anyways, I think that's about all I have to say then.
Okay. Any other comments from other councillors? Councillor Brooks Hill.
I was just wondering if we were going to put the motion on the table, or are we kind of saying our piece now? Or
well, I just wanted. Councillor Brooks Hill, thank you for that. I just wanted the presentation to be done and then the proponent to speak. And then if you had any questions prior to us putting on a motion, there are two motions. There is a motion that's on the front of your package that would deny this application. And there is a second option within your package that would support it. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask if there's a councillor that would like to put a motion on the table, and then we can move forward. So, Councillor Brooks Hill, I'm just trying to move everybody so I can actually see you. So, Councillor Brooks Hill, you have a motion that you would like to put on?
Yes, I guess. Well, I'll put on the motion for denial. So the development variance permit DVP 2020-14 be denied at 1605-5 Victoria Road West, Lot A, as in the package.
All right, so seconder for the motion. Councillor Charlotte. Now, any further discussion on this motion? Councillor Brooks Hill, and then Councillor Ryan, then Councillor Elliott.
So I'll be voting in favor of denying the permit for a number of reasons, a lot of which go back to the previous application that was denied. So one of my main things is consistency, and this goes back to the original survey and development of the bylaws surrounding the cannabis retail sales. And I thought that was a very robust process that really laid out a good reflection of what the community wanted. And so given how fresh it is, I don't feel that we should be issuing variances at this time. And so that's my strongest argument to oppose this.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan?
Yeah, I won't be voting in favor of the denial. I think it's the variances in this case are here for a reason. I understand that last application with the museum apparently is quite different than this. It sounds like maybe this proponent wasn't aware of the requirements until kind of late in the process, especially since the zoning already permitted for this use. I don't feel that the arguments in favor of, against allowing this type of use are that strong. I mean, I understand that there are, youth perhaps attending some of these places nearby, but I don't think that would be a deterrent to someone visiting a business. And I also don't think that it's reasonable to, like if you think of the ones downtown, for example, there are still youth visiting those stores and they're going to be nearby other cannabis retail outlets. So like, I understand that we need to maintain the rules, but I think in this case, it does seem like the proponent kind of wasn't aware until pretty late in the process. So I'm in favor of the denial.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott.
It's a tough one. I mean, having the escape room next door that does cater to a younger audience is a tough one for me to get over. I look at the art center and I say, sure, there are children that visit there, but it isn't a primary use for that facility. I know they may be trying to increase the activity and stay relevant, but at this stage, or what I've seen over the last 5 years, it hasn't been a highly used place by youth. Going back to the business community, I still think that's an important element to miss. We have a development perspective, and we're making a decision about a business in our town. So getting some input from the community that's or the people who know what I think it's valid. And to deny that, I think that's a mistake on our part. But that's I think I will be voting to deny this application, just on the fact that the escape room is next door and the health food stores are adjacent to that. So that's my take.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors with comments? I think I'm going to make comment at this point. I'm going to support this denial as well. This is the first time I sat on the previous council that made the decision to come up with the rules for cannabis and the distance away from children, that sort of thing. But this is the first time that we've had an existing business in an area that's come to us saying that this would be detrimental to them. So they've actually spoken up, and I understand that. But also when I look at the fencing, basically. The gardens are going to be higher than a 6-foot fence, so I don't think that that's really applicable and going to make much of a difference. So I'm going to vote in favor of denying this. Having said that, is there any other comments on this part A of the motions in front of us? Seeing none, I'm going to ask all in favor of this motion that's been put on the table. Please raise your hand. Opposed? Note that Councillor Rind is opposed and other councillors are in favor of denying this first motion. We're moving on to number 2. Do we need to carry on, Ms. Lowe, with the rest of it? I'm sorry, all of a sudden I've got lost here. So you're,
Okay.
Ms. Lowe,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship. So you need to just pronounce that the denial was carried.
The denial was carried. Thank you.
Okay. And then move on to number 2.
Number 2, someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Brooks Hill.
That council endorse staff's comments based on the regulatory criteria of the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch.
Seconder for the motion. Councillor Charlotte. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 3, someone put that on, please. Councillor Brooks Hill.
That the feedback from residents, if any, solicited by notification letters mailed to property owners within 100 meters of the subject property be provided to LCRB.
Seconder for the motion. Councillor Charlotte. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Item number 4.
I can
Councillor
keep
Brooks
going.
Hill. Yes, thank you.
That council recommend the denial for the issuance of a non-medical cannabis retail store license to Canadian Mountain Cannabis Limited at Unit 5, 1605 Victoria Road West for the following reasons. The location of the cannabis retail store is not consistent with the zoning bylaws. It is located within 100 meters of the nearest property line of a site containing a municipally owned building and site that caters to youth.
Seconder for the motion. Councillor Charlotte. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Ryan opposed. Note that, please. And then moving on to item number 5. Someone put that forward.
That the staff report dated January 26, 2021 be provided to LCRB as background.
Seconder for the motion. Councillor Charlotte. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, staff. We're moving on. Announcements from the mayor. Just, I have a couple of announcements this week. Just note that all of our friend Patty Larson from Community Connections retires on Friday after several years with the Community Food Bank. I think it's 20 plus years. I just want to congratulate Patty on being able to retire and thank her for the job she's done for the community. It's been awesome, and it's good to see that she's able to go home and put her feet up for a while. I just want to mention also that there is a forum on the 28th for the by-election. I believe one with the Rotary and one with the Revelstoke Review. And lastly, our condolences to the family of the late Sam Olinik. Sam was a community coroner here for 25 years, but also worked for the city of Revelstoke, I think, for 17 plus years as our public works supervisor. He passed away on the 15th at the age of 92, and we are grateful to what Sam has done for all of us in the community prior to us being on council. But I remember working for Sam back in the day, and remember how dedicated and how caring he was. And so our condolences as a council and from city staff go out to his family. All right, we are going to move on to item 9A, Public Works, Traffic and Highways Amendment Bylaw. Someone want to put that motion on the table for us, please? Councillor Charlotte.
Sure, I can do that. That the Traffic and Highways Amendment Bylaw number 2282 be adopted.
Is there a seconder for that motion? This is talking about snow in the roadway. So, Councillor Brooks Hill, any discussion on the motion? So it's kind of a housekeeping item where we want to make sure that people don't put their snow from the driveways out into the driving surface of the road, and bringing that into the bylaw. It was always worded as gravel or dirt or something. Now it has the word snow. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on to item 9.2. Someone put that on the table for me, please. Councillor Charlotte.
That the Municipal Ticket Information System Amendment Bylaw number 2283 be adopted.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Brooks Hill. Any further discussion on that motion? Councillor Charlotte.
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear, there was talk about education first for this and making sure that the word got out to the community. I'm wondering if there's any clarity on what that plan looks like.
So Ms. Lowe and Ms. Floyd, do you have any comments regarding bylaw enforcement and how that will play out? Or will it just be our staff knocking on doors to explain to people how that works?
Dawn, do you want me to go ahead?
Your Worship, yeah, I'll refer to Cindy.
Okay, so the bylaw officers and Darren, the public works crews, are going to work together. We're going to not ticket. They're going to verbally or give written warning notices to educate people. We're going to do a social media blitz, add it on our website. So basically really hype it up in the community prior to ticketing. And if somebody is ticketed, they will have received a warning first.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 11A, staff reports. CBT Community Outdoor Revitalization Capital Grant Grizzly Plaza. Is there any presentation on that, or you just want me to put that motion on the table?
Through your Worship, I believe Mrs. Wade would like to speak to this.
Okay.
Director of Development Services. This is a grant that we've all worked very hard to try and pull some plans together, so we've got a very high level document in front of you, but we definitely didn't want to miss out on this. So although there's not a presentation, Mrs. Wade can give you some details and answer any questions.
All right, Ms. Wade.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, there's an opportunity for the city to make an application with CBT to get upwards of $650,000 for capital grant. We have put together design guidelines that are attached to this document. We have put together just a very high level design principles and the grant application. As part of the grant application, they require we have council's endorsement of us submitting this application. We recognize that we will be going through a community engagement process if we're successful in receiving this fund. The funding for that will come out of the various departments' budgets to engage and move this concept forward so that we are engaged with the community and stakeholders to have a design that will inform a RFP. And then once we are into the RFP, that would initiate the capital grant portion of it. This is a very great opportunity to enhance the bandstand, which is the primary focus of this revitalization grant, and some transitional areas in between. I can answer any questions that you may have, and you have the package before you.
Okay. Councillors, any questions of Ms. Wade regarding this grant opportunity and moving the Grizzly Plaza into nicer looking revitalization.
I have a question, Your Worship.
Yes, go ahead,
So,
Councillor.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know before, I mean, you mentioned that there's going to be some engagement, which is great with the community. I think a lot of the changes that are proposed in here, even though they're high level, are, you know, like really wonderful and improve the accessibility of the Grizzly Plaza, which is excellent. I'm definitely a little bit sad to see that the bandstand wants to be removed. So curious, you know, before any of this gets actioned and funds get actually assigned, that there is room for some changes from what the concept in front of us is right now.
Ms. Wade?
Through your worship, yes, we recognize that we have to engage with the community and develop the plan. This is all very high level right now. It's good timing though, because we do have the heritage management plan that is underway as well, along with our OCP, and we have the wayfinding. Lots of elements in play that will help to inform this process, but we are very cognizant of developing the plan with the community that would then form the capital project.
Perfect. And I assume, you know, the museum and various stakeholders that are part of that heritage committee would be involved, obviously.
Yes, it would be through the heritage. Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So then, yeah, I'm in support of this.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, councillors? Okay. Seeing no other comments, we've got this in front of us. Somebody want to put this on the table, or did I already do that? Am I missing something here today? Nope. Somebody want to put this on the table? I'm not. Go ahead, Councillor Ryan, please.
That the application for the Community Outdoor Revitalization Grant through the Columbia Basin Trust for the revitalization of the bandstand in Grizzly Plaza be endorsed.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Charlotte. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Charlotte.
Yeah, I'll just throw out my support as well. I think this looks great. I think it's due for an update and especially make it more functional. We've been hearing about issues with functionality for a while. So it sounds like this will be the perfect storm, bringing everything in line and set the stage for another great few decades.
Awesome, great. Any other comments, councillors? Councillor Elliott.
I think there's, sorry, Your Worship, I think it's there's a lot of goodwill associated with the gazebo downtown. It's sort of a last 30-year legacy that people are quite attached to. So, I mean, it's a sensitive issue for some, but I think this is an opportunity to investigate something newer, maybe refresh it, but make it better. And that's the whole intent of it. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Great. Appreciate that comment. Yep. Most of you know I've been around here a long time, and I fully agree. This is one of the icons of our downtown community. And as we move forward with this, rather than seeing this disappear, if it's refurbished in some way that makes it better suitable for musicians and performers and that sort of thing, I'm definitely supportive of looking at what we can do to enhance this rather than take it away. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone in favor? Opposed? This motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wade. Going on to item 11B, we have our new economic development officer with us, do we, Ms. Lowe? And Jamie Mays, I think, is here.
Yes.
Regarding the economic development RDI funding application. So before we go and put this motion on the table, Ms. Mays, would you like to give us a rundown on this?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'd love to provide an overview of this report. The Community Economic Development Department has been in discussions with a number of stakeholders regarding recreation land use planning within our region. Discussions with our regional manager of rural development at the province have led to the Columbia Basin Rural Development Institute, a Selkirk College, approaching our CED department regarding an opportunity to secure funding to support the city and regional partners to complete the foundational work necessary to move towards a regionally collaborative, community-led backcountry recreation land use plan. So we were really excited to see this opportunity presented, and we feel the timing is ripe as a land use planning process of this scope will be long and involved, and having the funding and expertise for an applied research team to inform these very early stage discussions and research will, we feel, prove to be invaluable. So if the RDI's $120,000 funding application is successful, this research project will support Revelstoke area's efforts to explore the best path forward for a collaborative backcountry access plan and future long-term land use planning for our region. So essentially, this funding proposal for research project partnership with RDI will be building a readiness for a robust and inclusive long-term recreation land use planning process for Revelstoke and our surrounding area.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ms. Mays. I appreciate your input. This looks like a great thing to be supportive of as we move forward. Councillors, do you have any questions of Ms. Mays before we put this on the docket? Councillor Charlotte?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Your Worship and Ms. Mays. It's awesome to see you here presenting, especially a topic as exciting as this one. I've been involved in these conversations for a while, so I'm glad to see an opportunity come up, especially from the Rural Development Institute. I think having access to that knowledge base is going to be really helpful as we set this up for success long term. I'm curious, do you have an idea of timelines of how long of a process is this to get to a plan?
Great question, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Ms. Mays.
Okay. So for this initial funding application, it's focused on a one-year plan. And this one-year plan will really be focused on getting our baseline information in place so that when we do approach a long-term planning process, which in conversations with neighboring communities who have gone through this process can take up to 10 years, is a realistic timeline. We're hoping that if we can do this early research and support with a applied research team, we'll be giving ourselves a really good start. And maybe it's hard to say how long that process goes. There's many stakeholders involved. Lots of jurisdictional questions that need to be answered. That's probably just based on our neighboring communities and our early conversations. For them, it has been, quite a lengthy process to get to a backcountry recreation access management plan, that long-term plan.
Right.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Brooks Hill and Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I think it's great that it looks like we're going to be able to finally get this going. I know it's something a number of groups have been calling for a while, and this council, as well as the previous council, has been asking for. So it's really great to see it finally getting kickstarted. In the report where it talks about what the project scope is, elsewhere it talks about environmental values, but when it's talking about the actual project, I'd really like to see this first step really identifying sort of environmentally sensitive areas and making the environment a really big component of this, because that's a huge part of sort of the long-term vibrancy and vitality of our areas, ensuring environmental values are paramount.
Ms. Mays, any further comment?
Your Worship, yes, definitely agree with that comment. And we'll ensure that we see that environmental piece carried through with this initial stage of the project.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, hello, Jamie. Just curious, what is the RDI? Is that a federal or a provincial agency?
Your Worship?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the RDI is the Rural Development Institute. It's actually, my understanding is it's funded through the Columbia Basin and is an entity that's here to support our economic development initiatives and research needs. They're quite well regarded with the research projects that they do in the region, and my understanding is that the funding is supported through the Columbia Basin.
Okay, great. May I continue, Your Worship?
Yes, Go ahead.
I'm just curious. So the province has been sort of very dragging their heels on creating this land use planning document. Is this meant to take charge of it ourselves, or what are we doing?
Ms. Mays and then Ms. Braun.
Yes, this initial project, to my understanding, it's not us and RDI leading the land use planning process at all. Rather, it's us setting the stage and getting the pieces in place and understanding our gaps in information to start supporting a community-led land use planning process. I'll refer over to Ms. Braun.
Through your worship, yes, I think the opportunity here is that we will have a chance to review best practices from other communities across BC. We've already taken a look at the Golden process and the Shuswap Travel Alliance process, and there's many good features of those, but working with the RDI will allow us to really take advantage of their in-depth knowledge and reach across the province to help us define the best process for Revelstoke specifically. So they will help us to reach out to initial stakeholder groups, and I think being that they are a fairly neutral player in the conversation, I think that also sets us up for success better. We have had a conversation with the elected representative from the CSRD, David Brookshill, actually yesterday. Was it day before yesterday? And he's certainly in support. I think the CSRD sees it being critical that the CED for the city and the region be quite involved in this process, but we'd like to make sure that we have the blessing of all of the different stakeholders if we are going to play a key role. But initially, the idea is to share information, look at best practices, reach out to all the stakeholders, and define a process that works for everybody. Great. Does that answer your question?
It does, but I'm just curious. There's no obligation for the province to take the recommendations. It just gives us a little more clout, a little more professional presentation. Is that right?
From my understanding, I think there is a willingness on the part of the province to support full BRAP if we can show that we have a community-led process in place, a collaboration in place. And given that the ministry itself actually connected us with the RDI to pursue this as a first step, I think speaks volumes about the ministry's willingness to support an initiative like this.
Great, thank you.
Good. All right. Any further comments for Ms. Mays and Ms. Braun before we put the motion on the table? Seeing none, councillors, if one of you could put this motion forward, please. Councillor Charlotte.
Yes, that the submission of the Rural Development Institute's application to the Federal College and Community Social Innovation Fund to support the Recreation Access Management Project be supported.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Brookshill. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Elliott?
Whether we get the grant or not, do we still pursue this land use plan?
Through your worship, I can speak to that. Yes, certainly we will. There's a lot of interest on the part of our different partners, whether the recreation user groups, the Mount Begbie Protection Society, the NCES. So there is, we're ready. I think there has been, judging by the success of the processes in both the Shuswap and in Golden, we're behind. So I think we're ready to embark on this process. This just gives us, I think, the best possible start and the best chance at a successful process that will involve First Nations and key partners and look at environmental issues and set us up for success.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, that's great. I think the important part is that we're moving ahead regardless, and let's continue to take the steps necessary. That's where I was trying to go.
Great. Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you both, Ms. Mays and Ms. Braun, for your input on that. Moving on to 12A, correspondence, request for financial support, Softball BC. Whether councillors have any comments on that, but I would like to put that to Ms. McCabe in the Finance Department under Grant and Aid and let her report back to us on that. Are you all okay with that? Okay. So we'll put that there. Do we need a motion, Ms. Lowe, or would you like a motion on that?
Your worship, yes, I would like a motion. Thank you.
Okay, someone want to put a motion on the table that we defer that to finance to look at grant and aid? Okay, I'll put that motion on the table. I need a seconder. Councillor Brooks Hill has his hand up. So any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to communications, formalization of Lower River Jordan Trail memorandum. Ms. Lowe or Ms. Black or Mr. Black, sorry. Any comments on this letter?
Your worship, this is a communications piece that's been put together by Erica Hartling, our planner. And so she may want to have some discussion with council. And it's for their information. There's 2 referrals that the Development Services Department received, and these are her responses for council's information.
Ms. Wade, anything further? I see your name's lighting up in front of me here, so I'm thinking you want to say something to us.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to follow up on Ms. Lowe's comments, yes, these are before you. They are referrals to staff, and the province is asking for comments, and Ms. Hartling has outlined what our comments are to be submitted back to the province, and we consulted with other members of the city, and they have their comments in there, and Ms. Hartling's available if you have any questions.
Okay, councillors, any questions of Ms. Hartling regarding either the Lower River Jordan Trail or the Mount Begbie Campground Memorandum?
I think so. Good.
Okay, so do we need a motion on both of these being supportive of this, Ms. Lowe? Nope, just communications. All right, so I think everybody's happy with that. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hartling, Ms. Wade. Questions from the press? Ms. Floyd, were they going to join us if they had questions?
That's correct. We asked them to email questions in or to join us. And if they haven't joined us by now, we can move on.
All right. So I have no other business. So I want to say to both council and staff, thank you for your input today in getting this meeting done. So I'm going to ask for a termination of the meeting. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Brooks Hill, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you all. That ends our meeting for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Have a good night.